bring that. There you go. Hi, Professor. This is my speech, my informative speech for the class. Let me show you my audience. See, oh, I don't think I can see anybody. All right, here, let's go. There and there. Okay, turn it around. Just like that. All right. Bankrupt, abandoned, post-apocalyptic, corrupt. What do you think about when you hear these words? Every one of these words has been used to describe my city, Detroit, Michigan. Detroit was once called the arsenal of democracy, the Motor City, the city that moved America. Today it is better known as the murder capital, and last summer it earned the dubious distinction of being named the largest American municipality ever to declare bankruptcy. All of these things are true, but none of them are the whole story of Detroit. Today I would like to spend a few minutes talking to you about my hometown, Detroit, and while I may not be able to tell you the whole story, I think I will be able to give you a pretty good idea. Today I will discuss Detroit, past, present, and future. They say to know where you're going, you have to know where you've been. So let's start with where Detroit has been. Detroit was first founded in 1701 by Antoine Cadillac as a French trading post along the Detroit River. It takes its name from its placement along the river, and it means the Straits. In the 1768 Treaty of Paris, the territory of Detroit was ceded to the United States. In 1903, Henry Ford opened the Ford Motor Company in Detroit. Soon, people were coming from all over the country to work on his famous assembly lines. As Thomas Segru puts it in his book, The Origins of the Urban Crisis, overnight, Detroit had gone from one of the most depressed urban areas to a boomtown, a magnet that attracted workers from all over the United States. End quote. During the Second World War, many of those factories began producing tanks and other military equipment for the war effort, earning Detroit the nickname the Arsenal of Democracy. In the 1950s, a man by the name of Berry Gordy opened a small recording studio on the west side named Motown. Over the next few decades, Motown would produce hit after hit. The Supremes, Aretha Franklin, and Marvin Gaye are just a few of the artists that call both Motown studios and Detroit home. Throughout the mid-20th century, Detroit thrived. But of course, things would change. On July 23rd, 1967, the long simmering racial tensions in the city erupted violently onto the streets. 5 days of rioting ensued. When the smoke cleared, 43 people were dead, 2,000 structures were burned, and Detroit was forever changed. Soon the middle class of Detroit moved to the suburbs. The businesses followed after. The once mighty car companies began to falter. A culture of corruption became commonplace within Detroit's government, and things changed. People moved, houses became vacant, crime went up, poverty went up, so more people moved, so more houses became vacant, and so on and so forth, until by the year 2010, Detroit's population had fallen from its all-time high of 2 million people in the 1950s to just above 700,000. So now that you know a little bit about Detroit's history and how it got to where it is, let me tell you about some of the challenges. The first challenge is that of crime. Yes, crime is a problem in the city of Detroit, but it's one we are aware of and one we are working on. And actually, there's hope that things are changing. The FBI Crime Statistics Database shows that violent crime was down in the city of Detroit in the year 2013. And our new police chief, James Craig, has made public safety his #1 priority and already enacted several public safety initiatives, including getting as many officers as possible onto the streets and into the neighborhoods. The next challenge I would like to talk about is bankruptcy. What happens to an American city when it declares bankruptcy? Last summer, we heard all kinds of things. We heard that the police would stop responding, the museums would sell their art, the garbage would go uncollected, and all the city pensions would be cut. Thankfully, most of this has not happened. There are actually more police officers on the streets, and there's a plan to expand garbage collection to include curbside recycling, something Detroit has never had. As far as the art and the pensions, honestly, we're still not sure what's going to happen. But there are movements at both the state and local level to ensure that both are saved. The truth is we are still in the midst of bankruptcy. And while we don't know the eventual outcome, we do know this. Detroit's financial problems were a long time coming, and at least now we are facing them head on. Now that I've touched on a few of the challenges, I would like to touch on some of the positive things happening in the city. Downtown is coming back. The businesses are returning to downtown. Over the last 10 years, the CompuWare Corporation and the Quicken Loans Corporation both have returned to the city from the suburbs, bringing 10,000 workers along with them. Young entrepreneurs are finding cheap startup spaces in the city, as the artists are in Eastern Market. The city is returning. And when people come back, they realize the things that Detroit has always had. We have Belle Isle, a 982 island park in the middle of the Detroit River. We have 4 major league sports teams, 3 of whom play in downtown Detroit. We have Eastern Market, the largest and oldest farmers market in the country. And of course, we have Canada, that's just 5 minutes across the bridge or through the tunnel. But I think the most important thing we have is space and opportunity. We have space for everybody who wants to come here. We have space for the hippie and the hipster, for the artist and the entrepreneur, for the factory worker who's been here for 40 years, and the brand new college grad who wants to grow organic fruit in the middle of the city. So in conclusion, I will say this. Maybe in the future, if you hear someone talking about Detroit, and you hear words like bankrupt and abandoned, you'll be able to say, hey, wait, I heard Detroit's coming back. I heard the businesses are returning. I heard Detroit is moving forward. Detroit was once a great American city. And yes, it has fallen on troubling times. But things are happening here, and I believe the best of Detroit is yet to come. I will leave you with my favorite Detroit quote. Some cities get by on their good looks. Detroit has to work for a living, and working we are. Thank you.
Yay! Woo woo! Go Team Laura.